A look outside the Beltway at Notre Dame University in Indiana. On Tuesday, voters in the Hoosier state go to the polls in a primary that Senator Ted Cruz hopes won't be his last stand. I spoke with him yesterday about his effort to breathe new life into his campaign. Senator, I want to start with some of the unusual steps you took this week to shore up your campaign. First of all, your deal with John Kasich, where he's staying out of Indiana, and you're going to stay out of Oregon and New Mexico. You like to rail against the Washington cartel, but isn't your deal with John Kasich the essence of a cartel?
Well, Chris, good morning. It's good to be with you. Thank you for having me, and congratulations on your 20th anniversary as a show. It's always a pleasure to join you.
Thank you.
Listen, it is very simple. With Kasich, he made a decision about allocation of resources. I made a decision about allocation of resources. He decided to pull out of Indiana to focus elsewhere. I made the decision to go all in on Indiana and to focus on Indiana. And that's a natural thing. Both of our campaigns did it from the perspective of where we thought we were best positioned to win. And I will tell you what John Kasich and I do agree on. We disagree on some policy issues. But we agree that Hillary Clinton would be disastrous as the next president of this country, and that nominating Donald Trump ensures that Hillary Clinton wins. So neither one of us want to see Donald Trump as the nominee handing the general election to Hillary Clinton, and that's why I am campaigning so hard in Indiana to win the great state of Indiana.
But, sir, it is a deal. You'd certainly agree. And I want to put up what you said about the deal this week. Here it is.
I recognize that the media is all eager to talk about an alliance. There is no alliance.
But shortly after, John Weaver, Kasich's chief strategist, tweeted this: "I can't stand liars," clearly implying that it is an alliance and that there was an agreement between the two camps. Listen, our focus is on winning Indiana, and I'll tell you what the voters of Indiana care about. They care about jobs. They care about bringing jobs back to America. They care about bringing manufacturing jobs back to America. They care about raising wages for working men and women who've been left in the cold. They care about ending this administration's war on coal, which is wrong and immoral. And they care about expanding opportunity for young people. So that is my focus. We are barnstorming the state. And I got to say, Chris, this has been an incredible week. In this past week, we received just a couple of days ago the support of Indiana's Governor Mike Pence, an incredibly well-respected, strong conservative in Indiana. We received just yesterday the support of former Governor Pete Wilson in California, another strong leader that is a big deal in the state that I think is going to decide this whole thing. And then, obviously, earlier this week, we announced Carly Fiorina as my vice presidential nominee. Senator,
and I got to say, that announcement has injected energy and momentum. People are excited about having a clear and meaningful contract.
Let me get to Carly Fiorina, and specifically on the issue of jobs. Yes, you did name her as your running mate this week. Outsourcing is a big issue in Indiana. I don't have to tell you, because the company that controls Carrier Air Conditioning has announced they're going to shift 2,100 jobs from Indiana to Mexico. But Fiorina has a record as head of Hewlett-Packard, laying off 30,000 people and outsourcing many of those jobs to India and China. So I guess the question is, will the Cruz-Fiorina team do the same thing to Indiana that she did to Hewlett-Packard?
Carly has an incredible business record and an incredible personal story. You know, Carly started off as a secretary, and she rose the corporate ladder, became CEO of the largest technology company in the world, the first female CEO of... she was the first female CEO of a Fortune 20 company in history, and she helped HP become the largest technology company in the world, achieve remarkable success. Many of those jobs, by the way, were transferred from one state to another within the United States. But let me tell you, when it comes to bringing jobs back to America, there could not be a clearer contrast between Carly and me on the one hand and Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton on the other. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are flip sides of the same coin, and they both have the same approach. Let's take Carrier. Carrier is a very good example. It is a travesty that Carrier is pulling jobs out of Indiana, moving them to Mexico, but the reason they're doing it is because of the Obama administration's crushing taxes and crushing regulations. Now, what is Donald Trump's response to that? It is, he says he's going to punish Carrier. He's going to use the power of the federal government to punish them. By the way, that's the same thing Hillary Clinton says. It's the same thing Barack Obama says. That's the response of big government liberals, that we're going to enact policies that kill jobs, and then when businesses flee, we're going to use the power of government to punish them.
My approach is totally different. I understand what both Reagan and John F. Kennedy understood, that when you cut taxes and reduce regulations, you see millions and millions of new jobs. So what I'm going to do is repeal Obamacare, rein in the regulators that are killing jobs, the over 200 regulations from the Department of Energy that drove Carrier to Mexico.
Have insisted on limited time, so I do want to get to some other questions. You talked about Fiorina. Back when she was a candidate running for president, she took some shots at you. Here was one.
Ted Cruz is just like any other politician. He says one thing in Manhattan, he says another thing in Iowa, he says whatever he needs to say to get elected, and then he's going to do as he pleases.
Less than 4 months ago, there was your running mate basically saying you're a typical politician.
Look, Chris, she was a competitor in a primary. She was a vigorous competitor, and competitors in primaries throw shots at each other. We all remember when Reagan named George Herbert Walker Bush, and they immediately had to explain why Bush had called Reaganomics voodoo economics. What I can tell you is I've spent weeks and weeks and weeks campaigning with Carly on the road, barnstorming. We've been barnstorming all over the state of Indiana together. I've gotten to know her personally. And I got to tell you, in selecting a vice president, that's probably the most serious decision any presidential candidate will make. I was looking for someone with knowledge, with judgment, and with character, with the sort of temperament to make calm, cool, reasoned decisions, not to fly off on the handle, not to just be rash and respond to the latest Twitter storm, but to respond to the real problems facing this country. And the contrast is important. We got to fix these problems. It's one thing to yell about jobs. It's another thing to know how to fix them. And it's why I drew the contrast that Donald says he'd yell and scream and punish Carrier, but he has no economic policies to bring those jobs back. If I'm elected president, I believe Carrier will bring those jobs back to Indiana, because we're going to create such an attractive business environment that we're going to see companies from all over the world moving to America, creating jobs, because we will have reduced taxes, passed a flat tax, abolished the IRS, reined in the regulators. It matters how you do this, and Donald has no solutions.
Senator,
in fact, his one economic policy is a massive tax increase.
I hate to interrupt, but we do have limited time at your campaign's insistence. I also want to ask you about former House Speaker John Boehner, who talked about you this week, as you well know. Here he is.
Lucifer in the flesh. I get along with everybody. But I have never worked with a more miserable son of
And, Senator, it's not just Boehner. Congressman Pete King of New York says, I hate Ted Cruz. Former Senator Judd Gregg said this about you. He's a demagogue's demagogue, and he shouldn't be trusted with the responsibilities of the office. How do you unite, as you're trying to right now, the Republican Party to stop Trump when you're perhaps more polarizing than he is?
Well, Chris, it's very simple. Let me say, first of all, I don't know John Boehner. He and I have maybe said 50 words to each other in our entire life.
I know, but he knows you, and he feels that you worked against him in the House, stopping some of the deals he was trying to make.
You're exactly right, and he is correct on that. And you know what? In that same comment, let me finish, Chris, please. In that same comment, John Boehner praised Hillary Clinton, said he thought she was terrific, and he also praised Donald Trump, said Donald is his friend, is his golfing and texting buddy. And you're right. The reason Donald hates me is not anything I've ever said or done to him. It's that I stood with the American people and said we need to actually do what we said we would do. We need to fight against Obamacare. We need to fight against the debt that's bankrupting our country, and we need to stop amnesty. And Boehner wanted to cut deals with Obama and Hillary. And what this reveals, the biggest fraud of this entire election is Donald Trump pretending to be an outsider. John Boehner and Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are all Washington insiders. It's the same corrupt Washington game. And as you put it, Boehner's mad at me because I fought against the deals he was cutting with Obama. Donald Trump is exactly like Boehner and Hillary in cutting those deals, and that's why the American people want someone like Carly and me to stand with them instead of Washington.
I have one last question for you, and again, in the limited time that your campaign has given us. In a fundraising email this week, you say this: make no mistake, Indiana is absolutely pivotal. Senator, you finally have Trump in the one-on-one contest that you've been longing for. Indiana would seem to be a conservative state that would favor you. If you don't win in Indiana under these circumstances, is this race over?
Well, listen, I agree that Indiana is incredibly important. I think regardless of what happens in Indiana, Donald Trump is not getting to 1237. No one's getting to 1237. We're headed to a contested convention. I'm going to have a ton of delegates at that convention. Donald's going to have a ton of delegates.
But if he beats you,
and it's going to be a battle to see who can earn a majority. Of course not. It's going to be a battle to see who can earn a majority of the delegates elected by the people at the convention. And the reason Donald is so frantic to say the race is over and trying to get all of his media acolytes to say the race is over is because Donald knows he cannot earn a majority of the delegates that were elected by the people. And you got to win a majority. If you can't win a majority, it means you can't unite the party and you can't win. And let me make one final point, Chris. If you want as clear a contrast as possible in Indiana, this week in Indiana, I was celebrating the support of Carly Fiorina and Mike Pence. This week in Indiana, Donald Trump was celebrating the support of Mike Tyson, a convicted rapist who spent 3 years in prison in Indiana.
He also had the support of Bobby Knight.
But let me be clear, Chris. Donald said he thinks Mike Tyson is a, quote, tough guy. Well, I don't think rapists are tough guys. I think they are cowards and weaklings and bullies. And you want a contrast of this entire race. It is Donald and Mike Tyson, a convicted rapist, versus me standing with Carly Fiorina and Mike Pence. And I think the good people of the Hoosier State, that's a choice. Midwestern common sense and good judgment is going to yield, I hope, the right decision.
Senator, thank you very much. Next time, I hope we have more time to talk with each other. I always appreciate it.
I look forward to it.